Great. Well, thank you so much. So I'm really excited today. We're going to, kind of expand and go one layer deeper, if you will, on what Stan really talked about yesterday. So we really want to talk to you about the fact that n-Lorem really was a dream. And when you have a dream or you have a vision, the question is, you're here, I want to go there, how do you actually get there? That's what we're going to talk about this morning. So I'm really excited. I'll give an integrated overview of essentially what the processes and the systems that we've put in place, and then we'll turn it over to some of our team members and the functional area leads to give you a little bit deeper. So we really want to walk you through the process, and I think it came up, and Brady might have mentioned it yesterday. If you submit an application, your physician submits an application, what happens then? We want to let you in and share the full story with you. Oops. So I don't know if this is not. I'm pushing all the buttons. Okay, yeah, that's good. And you can see that little blurry picture, that's my personal little N of 1, so that little cutie pie. So really, again, the question when you're trying to build an organization is thinking about where do you want to go. The goal for n-Lorem has always been to take an individual process and actually industrialize it, to grow an organization leveraging expertise and experience and be able to industrialize it, to scale it. Because we know today we want to work on one person, next year we might want to work on thousands, right? And ultimately have the infinitely scalable solution. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, move into talking more about the infrastructure as well, talk about some key accomplishments, and of course touch on the future of n-Lorem before I turn it over to Nadina. So really when you think about creating the solution for nano-rare patients, when we started the organization, you really think about growing the organization along with the steps that we're moving forward for each program. And so that really involves moving with internal expertise, keep moving forward to expanding the input that we obtain with the external committees, bringing in those external perspectives that have been touched on, that is so important because we know there are so many decisions that are occurring along the way that are so critical. Ultimately, as far as bringing on the network of providers, I think is a really critical piece as well. Sorry. And the last two is really thinking about the benefit to the patient. So every single step is so critical that we're thinking about how does this particular step come back to ensuring that we're focusing on that particular patient and ensuring that that step resonates with thinking about the benefit to the patient. So if you look at really what industrialize means, we just think about where we started. Again, we're starting from one patient at a time, moving to industrialized, which is really thinking about having the ability to have steps in parallel. Next slide, please. So really thinking about leveraging the robots, being able to ensure we can use AI when it makes sense, having the high throughput, increasing our scalability, and being more efficient and much more cost effective as well. And so really, again, this goal that we have had all along is to be able to industrialize, to be able to scale. And I think that's what we're able to talk to you today and to share, that we've really and truly been able to industrialize this process. So now we get to the place where we're able to optimize and continue to improve and grow and establish the surrounding capacities around us. So if we look at building the infrastructure, again, we'll just look on the next slide. You'll see the team members. You'll hear from Nadina about our design, discovery, and research capabilities. Julie will talk more about the overall ASO discovery and development, including the regulatory and the CMC and toxicology. You'll hear from Lori on the clinical development, and then Amy later in the day to really talk more about how we've supported the patient journey and ensured the communications and building this nano-rare community. So what we really want to do here is I'm going to walk through what are the key steps that we are thinking about and what are the questions that we're answering along the way. So really, how are we ensuring that every step puts the pieces in place that enables us to answer these questions effectively and efficiently. So the questions we're really thinking about, how's it? There we go. Yay, thanks, Kim. So really trying to start from the point. Again, if we're walking through the questions from the point of a patient application, how do we ensure that we are selecting the patients that we think we have the best probability of being able to help? How do we ensure that once we've accepted a patient, that we can identify and bring forward an optimal ASO for that patient? How are we ensuring about these regulatory requirements? How are we ensuring that we're able to capture whether a patient is benefiting from their treatment? Because that's such a critical step in moving each of these treatments forward. And finally, how are we doing the important role of creating this nano-rare community? So again, walking you through the story and the journey of the question that we get quite often is, so what happens? My physician has submitted an application. Oftentimes for a patient and a family, finding a physician who is able to submit that application is a pretty significant journey in itself. Once we receive this information, the patient and the physician, all of their data and information has been put into this portal, this online application portal that we've created. The critical piece here is that we need the ability to understand the patient mutation, the consequence of the mutation, and the phenotype of the patient, the clinical manifestation, so that we can really think critically about whether we can establish an ASO strategy to be able to target the cause and the cause of the disease and the impact of that mutation. After we've done the internal scientific review, we have the Access to Treatment Committee. We have several of our Access to Treatment Committee members here today and just really are so grateful for their expertise and for them willing to give their time and expertise and input to these decisions. We present a case to the Access to Treatment Committee during which there is a conversation and obtaining input to really hear the recommendations, after which a decision is made by the n-Lorem Executive Committee. And then that patient's mutation becomes a drug target in our R&D portfolio. I think it's important to highlight that, first of all, each patient is blinded. So if I don't have the ability to match a face and a name with a target, my apologies, that's by design. So that's a really important piece, of course, that we maintain that anonymity. And so really thinking forward to be able to ensure that each patient has that privacy as well. Every patient's program is reviewed by around 25 experts. So we understand the gravity of this decision about whether a patient's program is accepted or we don't think we can help, and we're trying to do everything we can, and we have this very robust process to ensure that decision is very well thought out, and if we think we can help, trust me, we're going to do everything we can to be able to help. This gives you a couple of clips just to give you a sense of what this discussions actually look like. Again, really thinking about how every month the Access to Treatment Committee is chaired by Joe Gleason and Lori Mignon. They go over and review all of these different cases and have that conversation. You can see this highlights really a deep understanding of the genetics. Oftentimes in advance of these conversations, our team is really engaging with experts in each gene, oftentimes the submitter, really trying to get a very comprehensive understanding of the mutation and the consequence, because that's oftentimes actually a reason that sometimes we're not able to accept a patient's program. If we don't know what the mutation is doing, we cannot confidently be able to establish an ASO strategy. And this gives you a good picture of what that discussion really looks like. So now we've accepted a patient program. Again, that mutation becomes a target now in our R&D portfolio. We need to work to obtain patient cells, to get sequencing as well. And then Nadina and the team take over and really move forward with the ASO design and discovery steps. It's important that we leverage this commercial level automation. For every patient, we design upwards of 500 plus ASOs, depending upon the ASO strategy. We really feel it's important for us to be able to design as many as we possibly can that make sense for the sequence and again for the ASO strategy, for the consequence, our desired consequence of that ASO. And this really enables us to be able to have that confidence that we are identifying the optimal ASO. I think importantly, what we found is that across all of these programs, we have the ability to learn, right? So we're not thinking only for each patient, but then we can learn across. And that enables us to be able to apply the learnings from one patient to the next, and ultimately to improve on every subsequent patient as well. I think we mentioned the partnerships as we build the infrastructure, the internal expertise, having the external committees, and also building the network of partners. We have partners for the small-scale synthesis, for equipment, for the non-GLP tolerability studies, and also the external committee, the research management committee, is a really critical element here as well, and the team will touch on that a little bit more. This really exemplifies a couple of the key elements, and these are clips actually from the IND, and I think it's really important to just highlight from the point of this ASO design and discovery, the level of scientific evaluation that is occurring is going directly into the IND. So that gives you a sense of the requirement for how comprehensive and how high quality and how rigorous that we require every step to be. So this really gives you a sense of what we're providing to the FDA, just a couple of different screenshots. But really, from the beginning, as soon as that patient mutation comes in, we are creating this story. We're thinking about the FDA. That's our end goal. We want to put forward this IND as quickly and efficiently as we can, and it starts at the beginning. And these are some of the examples of pieces that go into that IND as well. So speaking of the INDs, I think Stan mentioned yesterday, we throw around IND, it's an investigational new drug application. And so the individualized antisense oligonucleotides, we are under in the Center for Drug Evaluation, CDER, at the FDA. These are research INDs. Each research IND is a couple thousand pages, but it's so critical that we have all of the elements that go into this IND, because the delays of waiting and not having the right information in there is not acceptable, right? We know every single day counts. And so really, we've established a streamlined system, and Julie and the team have really done a fantastic job. The coordination of working with many different external providers is actually quite complex. And she has this massive, very, very sophisticated, but also very comprehensive system to be able to move the patient programs forward as quickly as possible. You reserve slots, this program's moving forward, this one needs some more research, and all of those kind of exercises happening in real time for every single patient program. It's so critical that we pay attention to every single patient program and move it forward as quickly as we can. So all these steps are really focused on the safety of and the tolerability and the quality of the drug. So really, again, working with some of our CMC experts and partners, and really continuing to partner with these external organizations to be able to ensure the safety and the quality of the ASOs as we move forward. And I think we touched on this last year, but again, just gives you a sense of what the discovery and development process looks like. We've established, I think in traditional drug discovery and development, you oftentimes do one study, you wait for the results, you evaluate the results, then you move to the next step. There's no waiting. I'm fortunate for the team. There's no waiting that's going on, but I think that really works in the favor of the patients, because we've established the ability to navigate, understand this high quality data, move steps forward in parallel, and ultimately have all these things come together again at the IND submission. Again, showing you in sort of real time a couple of clips here from different INDs. Also on the upper right, seeing what our ultimate goal is, that study may proceed letter from the FDA, at which time we really begin to work very closely with the site team. A lot of that work has already been done, but really putting into place the motions, moving things forward. Let's get that first dose on the books, and really moving forward with the institutional IRB review and scheduling that first dosing. So this next question, now we have a patient being able to be treated. What's next? How do we ensure that we're able to understand if a patient is benefiting from their treatment? This is so critical. We have this STAR committee. It's a very small committee of very sophisticated experts in clinical outcome assessments, and especially in these neurological disorders. The neurodevelopmental and the neurobehavioral assessments are very complex, and the question is, how do have the ability to actually evaluate some of these very subtle improvements. They're very challenging, but the ultimate goal here is that we support the physician to make their treatment decision, because we are guided by the FDA regulatory sort of framework for research INDs. These research INDs are open-ended. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. So the protocol is a defined period of time, but the research INDs are open-ended until the physician determines that this patient will no longer be treated. And so our goal is to have the STAR committee, we collect the data, each patient has their own unique red cap, the clinical report forms, all of the data specific to that patient for their specific protocol being collected to support that physician's decision on whether they continue the patient treatment or not. We mentioned yesterday the Data Safety Monitoring Board. This is a really critical board that we've also established recently. It's chaired by Eugene Schneider, who's an antisense expert from Ionis. This is a really important element where all of the data on all of the patients is collected in a very robust way and reviewed. And obviously you can imagine that data set is becoming very robust, so I think we're going to have our DSMB come and once a quarter spend a week with us or something over time, because it's becoming very extensive. But it's really critical, and that also enables all of these experts to look across the programs, to try to learn from one to another, and to try to really evaluate whether we think there are no issues. And I think we're really pleased that we've had a pristine safety profile with all ASOs to date. This just gives you, again, another glimpse here in the top right. So REDCap is a program, and n-Lorem hosts a REDCap that is actually compliant with all the data privacy rules and regulations. And every single patient has their own set of these CRFs in REDCap that are collected, that Lori and the team has established, and we'll be able to ensure that we have that patient-specific data. And this is invaluable, of course. Again, this is enabling efficiencies and also very high quality data for the physician to be able to make that treatment decision. You can see, again, the very patient-specific protocol that is established and drafted for each specific patient, and the consent, and also the work that we do with the pharmacies. So the last question here is having all of you, is how do we start from, if you think back to 5 years ago, where this was a dream. It was Stan's dream, and he had a couple of helpers and volunteers, and Kim has been with him all along. And the question is, how do we actually bring people together? There have been many, many different approaches, and I think I will even say when I found out about n-Lorem after my son was diagnosed, I think my husband found it on Instagram or something. So social media was already working at that point. And I think many of us have learned about n-Lorem through the podcasts, which are really exceptional. I highly encourage you to listen. And also happy to have lots of different guests. So would love for any of you to be involved in that podcast if you're interested. Definitely connect with Amy on that. We're so grateful for this colloquium today, and Amy's just done an amazing job of making this happen. Thank you to all of you all for coming, and this is such a critical day and critical time of the year. So I think we hopefully will be able to do this every year, and we're just so appreciative to Biogen for creating an actual real conference. Look at this space. This is a real conference. This is pretty cool. And social media is so critical, sharing the patient stories, and thank you to all of the patient families who are willing to share their stories. It's a very vulnerable position to put yourself out there. And I think doing that is very brave, and we're so grateful for that, because you don't even know the impact that you have on another person, and you may never know, but I think we're here to tell you it has major impact, and thank you. Publishing is such a critical piece. I think we'll hear more about that later today as well. As soon as we have data that we think it should be published in a timely fashion that has a comprehensive amount of understanding of the impact of that data, we're publishing. We're really working hard to get to all of these, bigger publications, bigger news articles. You can see the New York Times article that was last year, I think it was in the fall. The San Diego Union Tribune article. We're really just working, and Amy and the team spend a lot of time really trying to ensure that the messaging is out. All of this matters. It matters because we're a nonprofit, and we need to create the story and create the energy and that groundswell of excitement so that people want to come in, join this journey, and contribute to helping that next patient. So I think some of the achievements that I'm the most proud of course, the number one is we're helping the patients, and that's the biggest goal. But really and truly, building a team is such a privilege. This team, they become your family, and I think Stan will talk a little bit more about sustainability later this afternoon, but really how we are embedding the culture of just a really wonderful group of people. Not just wanting to know them as professionals, but knowing their families, knowing what drives them, knowing how we can motivate them, bring them together, and help everybody be their best self. Bring your best self to work every single day. So that's just been such a gift, and I'm very proud of that. Of course, we've industrialized these processes. I think the biggest question, now that we have the industrialized ASO discovery and development, we have to start thinking about what comes before the diagnosis, moving that forward, and what comes after the treatment and the funding and the access. We'll talk more about that later today. Every single program involves, I think we counted around 75, but it's probably more, actually. So I want to make sure that each of you know. The question is, well, I have my application, what happened to it? Here's what happened, right? A lot of people are spending a lot of their time and energy making sure that we make the very best decision that we can for you and for your loved one. And so that's a really important piece. We've grown much quicker than we anticipated. We're trying to do the best we can to grow to meet the demand. I think that's been a really important aspect of where we are today compared to where we were. And ultimately, we continue to reduce the cost per patient. And again, if you have a second patient who can benefit from an ASO, we've just decreased the costs, right? We've just cut it in half. And that's a really important piece of where we're moving towards today. From a clinical perspective, we continue to expand the clinical sites and physicians. We just are so grateful to every single one. You've met several of them already, but just sometimes when we first meet a physician, they're like, oh, when am I going to do this? Nights and weekends, really and truly. This will evolve, and I think eventually physicians will have more time and space to do something like this, but these early adopters, they're just putting their hearts and souls into this. And we've built this network. It's a growing network, and we'll continue to optimize the safety and the benefit. And we're very, very thrilled that we haven't had any safety issues in that pristine safety profile, and also seeing the benefit as well. And also learning maximally. That's such a critical piece as well. We'll talk a little bit more later, but we are creating many assets that will contribute to n-Lorem sustainability, and Stan will touch on that this afternoon as well. And in general, I think we're in a very great place. So we're really excited to kick off today. I really appreciate your time and your contribution to this. And I think what we feel is this is really a new era for the nano-rare community, for this ultra-rare, right? Up until a couple years ago, this was just rare disease, broadly speaking. But when you think of the common rare diseases, there's a very different experience than the nano-rare patients that we're trying to help. And by bringing all of these people and entities together, these are very disparate, actually, groups. If you look, the regulatory, the institutions, the CROs, the patients and families, advocacy groups, and all these committee members, you're bringing them all together in a very efficient kind of, really working well together, like a well-oiled machine, if you will. And this has led us to these 21 approved INDs to be able to start treating. And it's just a handful of patients now, but I can guarantee this is just the beginning. And we're very excited about that as well. So again, the team, we have a couple of the team members here today. We just are so grateful for every single one who, many of them may be up at the crack of dawn in California already in the lab, I would imagine, but for every single person has been handpicked, and we're so grateful for them, and they're the reason that we're all here today. So really just looking to the future, I think the challenge and the opportunity here is to continue to focus on the individual while we scale, right? So while we industrialize, we maintain. It's like the forest and the trees and the forest and the trees. You need to continue to focus on the patient while we grow and industrialize across. And that's really front of mind for all of us, and we do this on a daily basis, and that will continue to be a priority. We mentioned really this ability to learn from every patient and improve for the next one. I think we will continue to do that, think the antisense, all of the research, the design and discovery, we're using the very best scientific expertise and experience, the chemistries and the technology that exists today, and we'll continue to do that. And from a process perspective, we're able to learn and improve and continue to do that for every single patient. And so we'll continue to optimize all these processes as we go. Of course, we'll continue to scale and increase our capacity and continue to learn. I think we're also in the research space, and again, Stan mentioned it yesterday, you'll hear some from Adina here coming up, understanding more about the molecular mechanisms. We're not operating in just a static environment where we're just doing exactly what we have today in front of us. We're thinking, what else? What else can we learn? What other questions can we ask? What else can we study? How can we answer those questions to enable more patients that we can help? And we're very, confident that we'll be able to do that with some of these research efforts that are ongoing already. And we're also going to be focusing on the challenges with access. I think that's something that's front and center for all of us moving forward. So with that, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Nadina coming up next. I have this slide because I think, we all get to know each other as professionals, but I think just showing you, these are very interesting, worldly individuals, scientists that are coming along.